welcome back. And we are reading again from Alone, Growing Up in Alexandra. And I'm actually going to be reading literally from the last sentence so that I can continue on this theme of being a Black girl in a township and how tough it was. And I'm sharing these stories, obviously, because I've written them and it's a lived experience and it's pivotal moments that I'm sharing with you. But I'm not sharing them to make men feel bad or to make women feel like victims or locate yourself in a victim role again. Or I'm also not saying them to trigger you necessarily. I'm saying them so that we bring them up into the surface and reflect on them. Because when you reflect on something, when you see something, you are able to transcend it. You are able to outgrow it. You are able to overcome it. That is why when you're sitting in a therapist office or a coach's office or a spiritual healer, your past is always brought to the surface. They will always ask you about the childhood. The childhood thing is a deep, deep thing. And childhood thing is not necessarily about at home, mama le papa per se. It is also the environment you were brought up in. I was brought up in a township, go Alexandra, Ikasilamakasi, go Gomora. And that that created the woman who's talking here today, my complexities, my intricacies, my nuances. It informed everything. It informs how I approach literally everything growing up in Alexandra. So if you grew up in the rural Lusiki Eastern Cape, it informs literally everything. Even if we are now older and pretty and educated and sophisticated, that innate upbringing, that first formative years, they speak volumes. And that's what we need to transcend. And that's why memoir writing, that's why us memoir writers tend to also just heal quite fast or a lot, because we write them down, we take it out of our bodies and we put it in paper. Once it's on paper and it's read by other people and it transforms other people, your healing process also just speeds up. So I am reliving and sharing these stories so that you can locate your story in my story and bring it up into the surface and reflect back on it and journal about it. Hopefully that journal can turn into a memoir. That would make me very, very happy. Please let me know if you need help. You turn it into a memoir, or you turn it into essays, or you turn it into a blog, or whatever it is, but it is out of your system. Do you know why it needs to be out of your system? So that it is not repeated by your children, or so that you don't keep reliving it in your life. You don't keep looking at men the same way. You don't keep dating. Let's say you are 35 and a lot happened in your formative years around your dynamic with boys, or your dynamic with teen boys, or your dynamic with men. And it left such a huge scar in you. And you still relate to that way. When you see a guy, you find that sometimes you cannot explain why a particular type of guy, even if he's handsome, even if he has money, even if he's got what, he makes you uncomfortable. Usually when you can't explain that, it is something that is way, way deep inside of you that needs to be brought up into the surface and then healed. You cannot, my friends, you cannot heal what you do not see. You can't heal what you don't see. You can't heal what you don't feel. When you come for my coaching sessions or anyone's coaching sessions, we always ask you to feel it in the body. You cannot heal what you don't see, and you cannot heal what you don't feel. So this is the purpose of why I'm reading these stories and these pivotal moments that happened to me, for those reasons, to help you find your story, write it, hopefully turn it into something meaningful, transmute your stories so that you can relate as a better adult that is not driven by kokasi or kotlhaganguteng. There's some great stuff that happened in our childhood, in our environments that, yes, of course, let's keep those going and let's strengthen them. But there are those that were very damaging and they continue to damage, especially our gender relations. If you look at our gender relations, how toxic they are, and not necessarily emjolweni phela, not mjolo fela, just the way we move around each other as men and women, as Black men and women, where men are always sort of respected and revered. And when something is done by a woman, it's seen, all those things we need to sort of transcend. And I'm not saying it happened in townships only. Obviously, it is a a whole patriarchal system, a whole capitalistic patriarchal system that positions us in particular ways. But even in our childhood, even our environment at home, our environment in our communities, instilled certain things that we still subconsciously, unconsciously enact and live. You know, my favorite way is saying little 12-year-olds, little 11-year-olds are running around in board meetings and political meetings, running the country. Meanwhile, there's just a lot of healing that needs to happen. So yeah, I've actually said a mouthful before I even start reading. Perhaps let me read. I actually did it the opposite this time. Hey, I reflected first before I read. So I'm gonna read and then I'm gonna leave it because we are sticking to not more than 20 minutes. YouTube is humbling. So YouTube, there's no hour here if you want views and so on. So I'm gonna continue reading from where I left off with the first part, and then we'll see. I might not have too much to reflect on because I reflected first. So here we go. Classes and Michi Michi. Okay, okay. So this is actually my pretty side. This is my ugly side. You know, we all have sides, right? So I'm gonna stick to the pretty side. Okay. You remember the last time I ended where whenever we saw each other with Oba, you know, if you have not seen last week's video, please go watch that. So I'm gonna maybe let me start there. Whenever we saw each other in the street, he would always ask, he always asked whether I had been bullied. Oba intervened whenever the boys fought, regardless. In other words, whenever the boys fought, because there was a lot of violence in the Gasi, and that's excuse me, that's what I'm going to be touching on today's reading. I'm not sure how far I'm going to go, but I'll read as far as I can. My older brother lived in Swaziland in the mid-80s. My mother sent him there to go live with my grandmother soon after the uprising of 1986 were at its height. You know, 1986, 1985, 86. Ooh, it was the state of emergency. You will remember, right? If you are around our age group. Young activists were not safe because of their involvement in politics or crime. Some did both and were often referred to as komtsotsis, meaning comrade and tsotsi combined. These comrades attended secret Free Mandela, Free Mandela and Viva Mandela meetings at churches. That's what I remember. I was 10 years old. 1986, I was 10. And there was always this thing of Huiwa Geregeng. And, you know, when you get to the church, yeah, Habula, it's the Mhabulo of ANC, you know. Those were the days. Those were very, very fascinating days, you know, a combination of a lot happening. There was a lot of turmoil, not only in South Africa, actually, in the world. You know, if you look at the history, the world history, the 80s was something else. So something was brewing and something was changing, definitely in South Africa. So these boys attended secret Free Mandela and Viva Mandela meetings at churches. The cruelest part of that era was the black-on-black violence that manifested in the brutal killings between the rival groups, the Azapos and the ANC. Scenes of butchered young men were the norm in Alexandra streets. So my mother sent Kabelo, my brother, away to save his life. Kabelo, my older brother, and two of his closest friends, Sello and Anthony, and Anthony, belonged to the ANC. They were earmarked to be killed. True story. By the Azapos. So, those were brutal, brutal days. Those were brutal, brutal times, you know. They were earmarked to be killed. Sello and Anthony were attacked one evening. Sello was hacked to death by the Azapo members. He was unrecognizable when they found him. Apparently, it was Lady Peace, you know. And that's what they used to do. It was like the signature of the then Azapos. And I'm not saying the political party. Obviously, the violent happened because of other issues, which we can't get to right now. But the Azapos, they would chop people into pieces. So Sello was chopped into pieces, and apparently he was unrecognizable. Anthony survived with a badly injured leg, but mysteriously he disappeared soon after that. We later found out that he had gone to exile to join the ANC army, Umkhonto weSizwe. So Anthony is the ones that went now in the 80s, but he was a young man, and the 80s were really intense. They were really hard. So he disappeared into exile. Kabelo was not there to protect me on that painful day of my life. You'll remember that, it pivots back to that story. When I got home after the beating I got from those four boys, I got into serious trouble for spilling the paraffin and getting dust all over the loaf bread. None of the adults cared much about what had happened to me when I reported it. I was only told, "Tlogela bashimane, it's not bashimaneng, leave boys alone, stay away from boys." Hearing that was worse than the beating, I could not understand I could not understand that what those four boys did was permitted. I could not understand that what those four boys did was permitted. What happened to me was dismissed. Later that evening, when I told my mother, she was too absent-minded to take what I told her seriously. My father was unapproachable, so I didn't bother him. I felt a deep betrayal, a betrayal I could only comprehend later in my life when I had to admit to myself and a therapist, because a therapist will always take you there, that I was bursting with rage. So my 20s and early 30s, I was just raging. I was very angry. Which is why I went to therapy, right? As a child, I felt let down by the adults in my life, my community, and of course by the boys. I could not understand why a beating like that held no consequence for boys. This turned into a deep anger against men and society. It created a rebel in me. So I'm going to leave it here because there's another one that's coming, another pivotal moment in my life, which I want to read on its own. So I'm going to leave it here. Like I said, I've already reflected. And just to conclude, really, reflect back on your childhood and take it outside the house. Look at the environment, reflect back and see what is it that you are still sort of carrying, that you are playing out, that you are enacting in your relationship space, at work, with friends, with men, with girls, with women, that actually finds its origins or its foundation in the environment that you grew up in. And just make a journal about it. Write an essay about it, write a blog about it, and come to me if you need some help. And perhaps to conclude, because I did not do this in the introduction, I am, in case you just stumbled upon this video and you're just seeing this woman reading, my name is Lebupule. I'm a life coach, I'm a teacher, I'm a memoirist, and amongst other things, I wear a few other hats as well, which you'll get to know as we continue. I have a private space where I do my teachings and my healing work on Patreon. The information is somewhere here, as you can see. But very quickly, you just go patreon.com/Lebupule's work. And that's where you can join and become a member. And let's continue healing our nation. This is my story. I can't wait to hear yours.